Hello everyone, and welcome to World War II at 80. I'm Ron May, your host, author, historian, and speaker on World War II history and the stories of those who served. We continue with our 10th episode today, which focuses on the events and stories of October 1944. As the month of October began, American and British troops advanced to the door of the Nazi homeland. Allied forces reached the German border and began attacking Germany's West Wall on October 2, 1944. The wall was a defensive line consisting of 18,000 concrete barriers referred to as dragon's teeth. Fortifications, pillboxes, trenches, and tank traps were added as well to push back any Allied attack. Built in the late 1930s along Germany's western border with the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France, the wall, shown with the red line on the map, extended almost 400 miles from the Netherlands to Switzerland. The Allies called it the Siegfried Line, the term taken from Greek mythology's dragon killer. The wall was designed to slow any Allied advance from the west. While it temporarily stalled, it did not prevent the Allied armies from advancing into Germany. Today, only a small fraction of the wall remains, much of it covered with moss and almost hidden from sight. The first German city to fall to the advancing Allied army was Aachen, located on Germany's far western border with Belgium and the Netherlands, shown with the yellow arrow on the map. By October 21st, the city of Aachen was occupied by the U.S. First Army. The campaign had begun in mid-September and raged for 5 weeks before ending in mid-October. It was one of the largest urban battles fought by U.S. forces in World War II. And it is still considered to be one of the toughest urban encounters in the entire war. The city of 160,000 was reduced to rubble. 1,000 residents hid in cellars during the battle. Some 6,000 returned when the battle ended. By October 21st, the city of Aachen was occupied by the U.S. First Army. It was the first major German city to fall. Appearing one day from among the rubble of a bombed building was military policeman Private Victor Hammond, a transplant from Martinsville, Indiana, to Detroit, who was serving with the Army in Aachen. A Detroit correspondent reported meeting Hammond in a November 21st dispatch for the Detroit Free Press. When asked by the correspondent what the men did during off hours, Hammond stated that they played cards. Army infantryman Francis Schiffauer of the 102nd Division was involved in the action just north of Aachen. He was born in Lackawanna, New York, and later moved to Indiana in 2009. On October 30th, Schiffauer's 406th Infantry Regiment arrived at Herzogenrath, a city at the western edge of Germany north of the city of Aachen. It's in the middle of the map in bold print. The Nazi 30th Infantry Division controlled the area. Schiffauer was wounded a day later on October 31st. We were moving up and we went down a road near the Germany-Netherlands border, he recalled in an interview. German artillery suddenly came in and I was hit by shrapnel in my right leg. I stood up and said to the guy beside me, "I think I got hit." He said I had and told me to sit down while he called for the medic. The medic stayed with me until a jeep came to take me to the battalion aid station. Schiffauer was treated and recovered in England. A few months later, in February 1945, he returned to his unit for the fighting further in Germany's interior. He survived the war. Meanwhile, another battle was raging south and east of Aachen in a rugged area called the Hurtgen Forest. Fought from September 19 until December 16, 1944, the 88-day battle was the longest one for U.S. forces on German land during World War II. The Hurtgen Forest was a 54-square-mile heavily forested area located about 3 miles south and east of the Belgian-German border. The Allied leaders' goal in the Hurtgen Forest, which is bracketed by the yellow arrows on the map, was to pin down German forces in the area to keep them from reinforcing the front lines farther north during the Battle of Aachen, shown with the green arrow. Oscar McClure of Danville, Indiana, was involved in that brutal conflict. McClure was part of the 8th Army Division, 13th Regiment. He was a communications wire lineman. McClure recalled in an interview, "Enemy shells would hit the trees and shower you with pieces of wood. It was a rough place." McClure survived the campaign, but many others didn't. There were heavy losses of men on both sides of the fight. German casualties were 28,000. Over 33,000 U.S. forces became casualties to injury or death. McClure's beloved company commander was one of them. Captain O'Hearn, Jr. lost his life during that battle. McClure said, "There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think of him." Late October also saw some significant advances in the Pacific Theater as Army, Navy, and Marine Corps forces advanced to the Philippines. Machinist's mate, 2nd Class William Bennett of Martinsville, Indiana, was among the naval forces. He was injured on October 18th. Bennett joined the service in the fall of 1943, and in January 1944, he transferred for training with the Naval Demolition Unit in Fort Pierce, Florida. In 1942, the Navy established the first Naval Combat Demolition Units. These special units, consisting of expert swimmers, were created to remove beach obstacles with underwater demolitions to prepare the way for amphibious landings. It is not known if Bennett was injured while doing underwater demolition, but thankfully he did survive the war. A much-awaited and celebrated return to the Philippines took place on October 20th as U.S. forces landed at Leyte. General Douglas MacArthur walked through the surf, captured in an iconic photo, making good on his promise 2.5 years earlier to return to the Philippines. Back on March 11, 1942, MacArthur had been hurriedly whisked off the island of Corregidor by boat as Japanese forces closed in on 120,000 U.S. and Filipino forces, which had been holding out on the Bataan Peninsula. He was taken to Australia to organize army forces for a future campaign against Japan. U.S. and Filipino forces finally surrendered to Japan following the fall of Bataan in April 1942. Over 21,000 U.S. and Filipino forces were forced on the Bataan Death March toward prisoner of war camps located 65 miles to the north. Many succumbed to death on the brutal forced march. MacArthur and the U.S. Army's return to the Philippines was a moment of fanfare, and was later preserved in a memorial set of statues at the place he landed. But that was only the beginning of the campaign. U.S. forces engaged the Japanese during the ensuing months in heavy fighting while making their way toward Manila. Combat in the Philippines would not end until Japan surrendered 10 months later. Meanwhile, U.S. naval forces were busy in Leyte Gulf, the body of water in the southeast part of the Philippine Islands chain, shown by the yellow arrow. The U.S. Third Fleet won a major battle against the Imperial Japanese Navy during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which commenced on October 23 and ended on October 26. As the combatant ships battled on the seas, Navy planes flying off aircraft carriers in the region brought terror and destruction on many Japanese ships during 3 air engagements. The battle left Japan with a loss of 28 ships, including 3 battleships and 1 large aircraft carrier. The U.S. Navy fared much better, with the loss of only 1 light carrier and 3 escort carriers, along with some other smaller ships. East of the Philippine Islands, U.S. B-29 Super Fortresses, the Army Air Force's largest bombers, arrived on the island of Tinian in the Marianas. These Allied bombers were staged strategically to begin bombing missions on mainland Japan in the coming months. Learn more about World War II history during 1944 and the stories of those who served in my World War II trilogy, Our Service, Our Stories, Volumes 1, 2, and 3. The books are available for purchase on my website, ronaldpmay.com. To contact me for questions or to schedule me for a speaking engagement, email me at ron@ronaldpmay.com. Also, be sure to check out all my other videos on my YouTube channel at World War II History and Stories with Ron May. You will find a link to my videos on the YouTube tab from the homepage of my website. Please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Please share it with others who you think may be interested. See you next month for our episode 11 featuring the events and stories of November 1944 on World War II at 80.